steamroll right through the next interview segment because we have Bob Pollock in studio with us. Our segment, our interview presented by Marcus and Mack, voted best law firm, best personal injury lawyer 3 years in a row in the Best of Indiana County contest. Visit them online at marcusandmack.com. The video feed should be up and running right now. I see the red light on the camera, so I guess that means we're rolling. So how you doing, Bob?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing fine. And again, if you have a question for Bob, give us a call, 724-479-1160, 724-349-WCCS. This has been a wet summer, Bob. I mean, we've been seeing a lot of rainfall. How's it affecting things as far as gardens and plants are concerned? What have you been hearing?
Some things like it wetter, and a lot of other things don't like it so wet.
Yeah, I know. I know that some things like to grow in the hardier, drier conditions. But is that causing maybe some diseases or anything along those lines?
There's always, when we have damp conditions, wet conditions, that always will eventually promote diseases of one sort or another. And, of course, we have a lot of variability between plants, between trees and shrubs and vegetables and things on their susceptibility to things. We've got plants that are immune to certain things, but then we have a whole huge scale of both, diseases that will affect plants that have some susceptibility. We can have resistance, that scale of resistance and susceptibility. Some things are very susceptible and other things are just marginally susceptible. What we tend to find in the conditions we've been having this year, there are a number of different soil-borne diseases. Phytophthora is a key one, and there's some others, but usually when we get into these wet conditions where the ground is saturated for a long time,
go ahead.
Low spots, just in the terrain, as you look across, it might look pretty level, but there's always little swales or little low spots, and those tend to be the spots where we tend to run into, where we'll see those things crop up first. Okay, you might see a decline. The color starts to be off. It's not, if it's green, it starts to fade.
Yeah, I was about to say, will it fade? Will it turn spotty? Will it turn black or things like that? That's what I was wondering about. So fading is one of the big things.
Yeah, so the color will change, and it might be just a lighter green for a little bit, and then it might go to yellow, and then the whole, we might get leaves dying, and then we might get the whole plant dying. And with those soil-borne diseases, that's typically what we end up with, especially with Phytophthora, because it attacks the roots. So you'll see a whole plant. You might see the plant wilt first, is another thing, where we have too much moisture. But then when we interject the disease part of that, it plugs up the vascular system of the plant, so water can't move, and so on. Like a hot day like we had yesterday with sun eventually after fog burned off. Yeah. Then we will start to see some wilting in those plants. And that's really kind of a lot of times a first sign. Even before the color goes, you might see the leaves wilting. And that especially can happen on a lot of the different squashes, whether it be, summer squash, zucchini or yellow squash, even on pumpkins, and other vine crops that can hurt, melons, watermelons, all of that, you might see a wilting of the plant.
So what should I know that the average home gardener, nobody can control Mother Nature in this case, but the average backyard gardener, what can they do to kind of mitigate the effects of maybe oversaturation?
A lot of times it goes back to soil. If we're growing in our native soils, trying to select a site that's maybe a little higher, or sites.
So the water runs down, yeah.
Why does the garden always have to be in one plot? You can break that up. It doesn't have to all be in one big space. You can have it in smaller sections where you have better soils to work with.
Okay.
If you have room to do that, or we go into raised beds.
All right. So we have a caller on the line, and caller, go ahead with your question.
Mr. Pollock, I think I know the answer to this question, but I need some affirmation from you. With the heavy rains that we've had, if the garden is flooded, everything's lost, right?
Not, yeah. So if you have lower laying land where, everything got flooded, and that water, we don't know where that water came from. It might have come from a stream. It might have just backed up, but we don't know the source of the water or the quality of the water. That needs to be judged on the individual crop and the stage of growth. Mm-hmm. So if we're talking about vegetables, some things are more susceptible, especially lower growing plants. Now, let's take, if it's just the plant itself, let's say you have watermelons or cantaloupes that you're growing. Those plants might have been still smaller. They might not have had any fruit on them at the time of the flooding or when water backed up. And it could just be ponding. Ponding's a little different than if we have actual, water flowing from a creek or a stream that would infiltrate.
Caller, what plants are you particularly worried about, if I may ask?
Tomatoes, of course.
So tomatoes there.
Oh, tomatoes. So normally, if you're going to stake them, they're growing up.
Right.
You might not have had any fruit on there at this point, or you might have small fruits, depending on how, deep that water, came up. Does the plant survive? That's one thing. Just because it gets flooded temporarily, that water can go up for, an hour, 2 hours, or even overnight, and then go down and recede. And a lot of times that plant will survive that. And if it does, generally you're okay. If you had fruit on there that did get underwater, you might want to just take that fruit off. Even though it wasn't mature yet and there's probably time and nothing would happen, you can just take that off. And then as that plant continues to grow and reflower and set new fruit, you're going to be fine. Any of that water that touches, it's not going to infiltrate. It's not going to get it absorbed into the plant and cause, let's say there's E. coli in it, which is typically what can happen, although there can be other contaminants in there. That's not going to go through the root system and internally into the plant and then show up in all the fruit, okay? It's a contact. It's by contact. And having the residue on there and having a location where that E. coli can grow. And typically once we get, you can irrigate with water out of a stream, and that's not going to be, even if you overhead irrigate, most cases, in a number of days, that will dry off and that fruit will be okay. Now, if you get something like cabbage or lettuce, those kind of things, then typically they will die from that event, and typically they're contaminated and you don't want to take the chance of using those.
All right. Did we get answer to your question there, ma'am?
Very much so. Thank you. I appreciate it.
That's on the surface, that might seem like a simple question, but it's complicated.
It is a complicated
and it's
issue.
not a yes or no. Corn's another thing. Corn grows up on a stalk, and
right.
Typically, even if the whole plant gets flooded, now if the ear is on there and you get flooding water on there, typically that ear, the husk on that ear you'll get muddy, and you can never get that off.
Yeah.
It just won't come off.
Yeah.
So you typically lose that at that point.
So it really just depends on the plant in the case of every situation there.
And we're not just talking about some of the, Salmonella and E. coli and those organisms that can cause us harm. In floodwater, we have no idea what all's in there. There can be, fecal matter, the broad spectrum can be in that water, and that's why we tend to err on the side of caution, food safety, and in many cases, you just say, especially if it comes in contact with the edible portion of the plant, we just err on the side of caution and say, don't use that. And there's a number of documents on Center for Disease Control, CDC website regarding disasters and flooding and food and all across the board, all kind of things we need to think about when that kind of situation happens.
Probably a little bit more information. Oh, go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Well, she says thank you. And probably a lot more information than what you were probably expecting. You have a good day, ma'am.
Thank you. You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Wow. So a lot there. A lot to unpack.
Yep. And the stage of growth, that's another, we've been kind of talking about that, but the stage of the growth the plant's in. A lot of times a plant can be underwater for 24 hours, and then when that water recedes, sometimes it will recover from that and continue to grow. You'll get new growth on there and be okay. Other times, the plant will, if it doesn't have a good enough, strong enough root system, or it gets damaged, and the plant will die, and we're back to square one.
All right. We have another caller on the line. Caller, go ahead.
Yes, my tomato plants seem very spindly and tall, and the bottom leaves are yellowing. What do I need to do? How do I trim them?
Okay.
Is there a quick answer to that one, Bob?
Yeah,
we're just about out of time.
All right. Bottom leaves yellowing, that can relate all back to the amount of moisture we've had, too much in many cases. It could also be an indicator that the plant's under stress, and so those bottom oldest leaves they're going to shed those off. And it could also be that there might be spots on those leaves that's causing that. So either early blight or septorial leaf spot are options there. Those bottom leaves, as they yellow, you can remove those. Because the plant's spindly, it hasn't probably been getting enough light. And then fertility can also enter into that, whether it's been fertilized, the fertility level of the soil,
all right,
may not be high enough. We may need to supplement that if you have a liquid feed. And you can even put a little bit of like a 5-10-5.
I was thinking Miracle Grow might work in this case.
And then just work that into the soil lightly if you can do that to give it a boost. And then the more light thing, I don't know if you have some shading there, or there's some trees that are shading part of the day, that can cause that growth to extend and be spindly. You may need to stake them if they're not staked just to help support those. But look at those things.
All right.
To see if that'll help. And pruning wise, we tend to just try to sucker them. You might have a branch. You've got a branch coming out from the main stem, and then you might have a couple branches that are growing straight up in the air. Those are usually suckers, and they might come right at the base of where that branch is attached to the main branch. You'll get another branch. Those are suckers. Those can be pinched out just to open the plant up a little bit more.
All right, caller, did we get an answer to your question?
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
All right, she says perfect. Excellent. Well, thank you for calling in, ma'am. You have a wonderful weekend.
You too.
Thank you, ma'am. So a lot of great discussion there. People concerned about their tomato plants. Just very quickly, I guess it's harvest time, right?
Yeah, for a number of things, yes.
So keep an eye on that garden, I guess.
That's right.
All right. Hey, Bob, thanks very much
You're
for
welcome.
coming in today, and thanks to our callers as well, because those are some good questions.
They were.
All right. Again, thanks to Bob Pollock, Indiana County Extension Office, for joining us this week on Indiana in the Morning, as he does every week. And our segment is brought to you by Marcus & Mack, voted best law firm, best personal injury lawyer 3 years in a row in the Best of Indiana County contest. Visit them online at marcusandmack.com. We are just about to the top of the 8 o'clock hour. Coming up next, we'll have Mark Burdig joining us. He'll be talking, I believe, about the Junior Legion tournament, and we'll also have the Nurse Honor Guard joining us as well. We'll be talking about that coming up in our next hour as well. So Indiana in the Morning, presented by First Commonwealth Bank, continues. We'll have a check of Fox News headlines coming up in about 20 seconds or so, and then we'll have the latest from the WCCS newsroom. It's a Friday morning, and you're right smack dab in the middle of the most informative 4 hours in radio.
You're listening to the voice of Indiana County, WCCS, Homer City, Indiana.
WCCS.
Gone a week ago.